Michael.
Hey, McGraw. Thanks for having me.
You got it. What's the next TIF we got to worry about here?
So this is actually pretty close to home here. It's right down the street. The Boulevard expansion, they're going for a phase 2 of that right now. So
Okay.
The first phase was about 10 years ago, and there was some tax increment financing used for that. And they're going for round 2 right now.
And how much did they get the first time?
It was about $18 million. They're going for roughly the same amount this time, trying to get about $15.5 million in TIF, and then they're going for a TDD in the area as well.
A TDD, what is that? Explain that to people.
Transportation Development District. So it's essentially a sales tax is added on to the area. It would be a 1% sales tax.
And why do they need that?
So the argument is that development hasn't happened here yet, and so development needs to happen. There needs to be something to give it the boot. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is this is a prime retail location. I mean, Richmond Heights, this whole Boulevard area has become one of the primetime areas. You've got the Galleria right across the street from it.
Right.
We're right at the intersection of 2 highways. It just doesn't seem like this kind of investment might be needed.
Right. And the development hasn't gone in that spot because the developers haven't sold the land.
Exactly.
They've been holding on to it for all these years.
And
waiting for this to happen.
Guess what's about to happen.
Right. Yeah, development is happening because that's what you want to happen. Okay.
Exactly.
$18 million. How successful has the first phase of the Boulevard been?
The first phase has actually been really successful. The developers have claimed there's been a 90% leasing rate, occupancy. There's next to nothing that isn't being filled up right now. I mean, you can look right across the street. It's a happening place. There's always population walking in and out. It's been very successful, and that should just be proof in of itself that there's not really a necessity to push this kind of thing forward.
Right. Now, the Clayton School District is against this. Why are school districts usually against TIFs?
Yeah, so school districts are usually the ones who suffer from a TIF like this because what it essentially does is it limits property taxes that can be collected for other public goods like schools. And so residential units are going to be coming in with this new development, and there's a potential that there'd be new students coming in, new people moving into this area,
right.
But there'd be less funding for the kids in the school because this money would be essentially diverted away towards the development, towards the developer.
So just so I understand you, the second phase of the Boulevard is going to include some residential homes.
Yes.
Or some residential condos.
It's planning on including roughly 160, yeah.
And so some families might move in,
Mm-hmm.
some kids of school age might move in. Those kids will be going to the Clayton School District.
Yes.
And they'll be paid property taxes, or the homeowners will be paying property taxes, but a portion of the property taxes that goes to the school to help fund their children in the district aren't going to the schools.
Exactly. So when it comes to this kind of situation, if the population of the school increases, you just have less funding per student. And there's been a lot of issues with this kind of thing, both with property taxes being diverted away from schools, but also just with the issue of where these kind of TIFs are taking place. There's a report released actually last year that it found that about 2/3 of TIF inside of St. Louis are going towards strong housing markets, going towards areas that flat out don't need it.
So right, the development isn't happening in North City,
right?
Where you could argue, hey, you know what? They need a little help to start to spur some economic development. It's going towards smack dab. You could argue in the economic center.
Mm-hmm. It's going right across the street from the Galleria.
Right. Yeah. You've got 2 major highways. You've got the Galleria. You've got the first phase. You've got the financial district, Clayton, right, at a quarter of a mile away. So it's a very desirable area. Why does it need government subsidies?
Yeah, and I mean, the developers have even marketed the project saying it'll be successful because within 3 miles you have over 100,000 residents with an average income of over $90,000.
Right.
It's not like this area is hurting.
And the same politicians who will complain about welfare and welfare queens and welfare children and people living on, right, they can't get off the public dole, will then turn around and give a developer a big, giant welfare check to build a building.
Exactly. And it's turning out that a lot of times these kind of things aren't even effective. There's not a whole lot of reporting and a lot of accountability behind this. But the SLDC released a report that found roughly $50,000 are gone towards creating every single job. Any jobs that are just allocated from one area in St. Louis to another, those aren't really jobs created.
You also have to make the argument, or at least bring up the fact, that this is going to be in officially Richmond Heights. Mm-hmm. Richmond Heights, it's like this sort of, you've got Clayton, Richmond Heights, you've got Maplewood, right, Ladue, sort of all right here. So they're all fighting it's like the four corners of St. Louis. They're all fighting for that same retail dollar, for the same person to buy that bar of soap. So I'll undercut you to get them to build it, to buy it in my side of the street, not your side of the street. And ultimately, everybody loses because of that fight.
Yeah, that's been a huge problem in St. Louis, is just one municipality pitting itself against another, essentially. I mean, when these kind of tax incentives are on the table, it's developers know that they can, if they're not offered it in one area, they can just move down the street. I mean, you literally have Walmarts getting up and moving 2 miles down the street to another municipality.
What if Richmond Heights said, you know what? Out-of-state developer for the Boulevard, we want you to come in here and build this. We'll do everything we can. We'll change the streets. We'll change the signs. We'll make a left-hand turn or right-hand turn. But we're not going to give you any TIF money. No. Would they still build it right here?
It's very possible. I mean, I'm not the developer, so I can't speak for him, but it sure seems like an ideal location.
When Michael Highsmith with the Show Me Institute, where can we find more information?
You can read more about this at showmeinstitute.org, or you can follow us on Twitter at showme.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, McGraw.
Day 2 was much better than day 1, right? A little more enjoyable, right? Not that you were bad the first time, but once you do it a couple times, then you kind of get the hang of it.
Yeah.